Welcome to our live coverage on CBN News as we await President Biden addressing the nation from the Oval Office. This will be his first time speaking since announcing that via X that he is indeed stepping down out of the race to win re-election. Joining me now, CBN chief political analyst David Brody. And David, we had Netanyahu there in Capitol Hill earlier today. Speaking, and so they just keep coming one after another. Here comes President Biden next. What can we expect tonight?
Well, yeah, it's like it's not come from one major event a day. Now they have to give us two major events a day. Thanks a lot. So news gods with a lowercase g, by the way, just so we're all clear on that. Look, I think there's one word tonight, and that's why. So that's what we want answered. Why did he do it? Now, here's the thing, and this is where it gets tricky. Dan, as I just look you in the eye and I look our YouTube audience in the eye, our CBN News app audience in the eye, we all know the why. We all know the why. The question is Joe Biden going to say the why tonight? And I think that's really what we're looking at. And I got to tell you, I don't think he's going to. I mean, because the why would be this. The why would be because I'm getting up there in age, because I've lost a step or two, and because I saw the poll numbers and Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama and all these people came to me and said, I got to get out of the race. And I didn't really want to get out of the race, but I had to get out of the race. There you go. That's my that's my address tonight from the Oval Office. And that's exactly what he should say if he wanted to really level with the American people. But let the gaslighting begin, Dan, because we're going to get gaslit again tonight about, in essence, my guess is a lot of gobbledygook about his legacy, Dan. About that it's time to pass the torch. He'll talk about a younger generation, that type of stuff. And so it's all going to feel, Dan, very generic. I have a feeling. I'd be very surprised if he actually goes there tonight in the speech.
Yeah, indeed. And if you're just joining us, we're waiting for President Biden here. He's going to address the nation from the Oval Office. And look, there's a lot of questions now. As you said, the obvious answer that like you said, he might give a vague answer here, but what everyone's assuming is that, hey, look, he's just getting up there in age, and it became clear after that debate that this just wasn't going to work out. But then the questions remain, well, what do you do with the remaining months here in office while he's still the president? I mean, we've got all these, we just had some airspace threats out over the West Coast here. We of course see all the protests going on with Netanyahu in town, and then these anti-Israeli protesters, these pro-Hamas protesters out there, all this tension going on. Still, a few months is a long time in presidential in terminology, right? There are a lot of things that could happen, and only one bad thing needs to happen for things to get really out of control. So you've got to have a commander-in-chief who is capable and ready to protect and defend the nation here at a moment's notice. So where does that conversation go from here?
Well, my political spidey sense tells me that the conversation with Joe Biden is not over yet, even though he has said he's not going to run for president in 2024. In other words, his campaign has ended. I'm not quite sure if the questions will end about not just his health, but what the rest of his term will look like. So, for example, tonight, what we'll be watching is, once again, the delivery, and it'll be on prompter. So I guess he gets a bit of a advantage there. But I think the conversation is going to turn now for Biden into these next few months of, should he even be president? And so that kind of gets me back to why he probably can't say anything about his mental acuity tonight, or lack thereof, or even anything about age. Because if he goes there and he says that, well, then the natural follow-up is, well, if that's an issue now and you're not going to run for president in 2024, why are you even president today? So he's kind of stuck. It's like he has to level with the American people, but at the same time, he's not going to, because he could also get hamstrung on a lot of follow-up questions about, well, why are you even president? So it's really a tricky situation. I'm curious to see how he does it tonight. My guess is we're going to hear a lot of generic legacy talk and no specifics, Dan.
Yeah, and obviously the race has changed enormously. Historic in the fact that nobody's dropped out. Candidate has dropped out this late and this close to the election. So things have dramatically changed. You had all your narratives set in place, both sides, in fact, and particularly for former President Trump. So he clearly had his comfort level and knowing where to go with Joe Biden and what to say about him and what things were resonating with his followers and the people who are supporting Donald Trump. Now everything has changed here, so he's got to kind of walk this ground, I guess, David, where you're still, Harris is part of this administration, so you're still criticizing and looking for things to pick apart with Joe Biden, but at the same time you don't want to. Your opponent's actually Kamala Harris here, so he's got a interesting job ahead for him as well on his campaign trail.
Well, he does, and I think we're obviously seeing some of the contours of that play out already from a strategy standpoint with the Trump campaign and the Harris campaign. I don't want to get into rumors or conjecture, but I do want to put my critical thinking hat here on for a moment and kind of try to understand a little bit of the TikTok of what exactly happened. How did he get from I'm in it, I'm going to win it, to all of a sudden now he's out? Now, the conventional answer is Pelosi and others got to him, and that was that. Okay, but we know he's not going to say that. So at that point,
my fellow Americans,
let's listen.
All right, sorry to interrupt, David, but here comes President Biden. We'll talk
in the Oval Office. In this sacred space, I'm surrounded by portraits of extraordinary American presidents. Thomas Jefferson wrote the immortal words that guide this nation. George Washington, who showed us presidents are not kings. Abraham Lincoln, who implored us to reject malice. Franklin Roosevelt, who inspired us to reject fear. I revere this office, but I love my country more. It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. But in the defense of democracy, which is at stake, I think it's more important than any title. I draw strength and I find joy in working for the American people. But this sacred task of perfecting our union is not about me. It's about you, your families, your futures. It's about we, the people. We can never forget that. And I never have. I've made it clear that I believe America is at an inflection point. One of those rare moments in history when the decisions we make now will determine our fate of our nation and the world for decades to come. America's going to have to choose between moving forward or backward, between hope and hate, between unity and division. We have to decide, do we still believe in honesty, decency, respect, freedom, justice, and democracy? In this moment, we can see those we disagree with not as enemies, but as fellow Americans. Can we do that? Does character in public life still matter? I believe I know the answer to these questions because I know you, the American people. And I know this: we are a great nation because we are good people. When you elected me to this office, I promised to always level with you, to tell you the truth. And the truth, the sacred cause of this country, is larger than any one of us. And those of us who cherish that cause cherish it so much. A cause of American democracy itself must unite to protect it. You know, in recent weeks, it's become clear to me that I need to unite my party in this critical endeavor. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation. You know, there is a time and a place for long years of experience in public life. But there's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices. And that time and place is now. Over the next 6 months, I'll be focused on doing my job as president. That means I'll continue to lower costs for hardworking families, grow our economy, I'll keep defending our personal freedoms and our civil rights, from the right to vote to the right to choose. I'll keep calling out hate and extremism. Make it clear there is no place in America for political violence or any violence ever, period. I'm going to keep speaking out to protect our kids from gun violence, our planet from climate crisis that is the existential threat. And I will keep fighting for my cancer moonshot so we can end cancer as we know it, because we can do it. And I'm going to call for Supreme Court reform, because this is critical to our democracy, Supreme Court reform. You know, I will keep working to ensure America remains strong and secure and the leader of the free world. I'm the first president in this century to report to the American people that the United States is not at war anywhere in the world. We'll keep rallying a coalition of proud nations to stop Putin from taking over Ukraine and doing more damage. We'll keep NATO stronger, and I'll make it more powerful and more united than any time in all of our history. I'll keep doing the same for our allies in the Pacific. You know, when I came to office, the conventional wisdom was that China would inevitably surpass the United States. That's not the case anymore. And I'm going to keep working to end the war in Gaza, bring home all the hostages, and bring peace and security to the Middle East and end this war. We're also working around the clock to bring home Americans being unjustly detained all around the world. You know, we've come so far since my inauguration. On that day, I told you, as I stood in that winter, we stood in a winter of peril and a winter of possibilities. Peril and possibilities. We were in the grip of the worst pandemic in the century. The worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. The worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. But we came together as Americans, and we got through it. We emerged stronger, more prosperous, and more secure. Today we have the strongest economy in the world, creating nearly 16 million new jobs, a record. Wages are up. Inflation continues to come down. The racial wealth gap is the lowest it's been in 20 years. We're literally rebuilding our entire nation, urban, suburban, rural, and tribal communities. Manufacturing has come back to America. We're leading the world again in chips and science and innovation. We finally beat Big Pharma after all these years to lower the cost of prescription drugs for seniors. And I'm going to keep fighting to make sure we lower the cost for everyone, not just seniors. More people have health care today in America than ever before. And I signed one of the most significant laws helping millions of veterans and their families who are exposed to toxic materials. You know, the most significant climate law ever in the history of the world. The first major gun safety law in 30 years. And today, the violent crime rate is at a 50-year low. We're also securing our border. Border crossings are lower today than when the previous administration left office. I've kept my commitment to appoint the first black woman to the Supreme Court of the United States of America. I also kept my commitment to have an administration that looks like America and be a president for all Americans. That's what I've done. I ran for president 4 years ago because I believed and still do that the soul of America was at stake. The very nature of who we are was at stake. And that's still the case. America's an idea. An idea stronger than any army, bigger than any ocean, more powerful than any dictator or tyrant. It's the most powerful idea in the history of the world. That idea is that we hold these truths to be self-evident. We're all created equal, endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We've never fully lived up to it, to this sacred idea, but we've never walked away from it either. And I do not believe the American people will walk away from it now. In just a few months, the American people will choose the course of America's future. I made my choice. I've made my views known. I'd like to thank our great Vice President Kamala Harris. She's experienced, she's tough, she's capable. She's been an incredible partner to me and a leader for our country. Now the choice is up to you, the American people. When you make that choice, remember the words of Benjamin Franklin hanging on my wall here in the Oval Office, alongside the busts of Dr. King and Rosa Parks and Cesar Chavez. When Ben Franklin was asked, as he emerged from the convention going on, whether the founders had given America a monarchy or republic, Franklin's response was, a republic, if you can keep it. A republic, if you can keep it. Whether we keep our republic is now in your hands. My fellow Americans, it's been the privilege of my life to serve this nation for over 50 years. Nowhere else on earth could a kid with a stutter, from modest beginnings in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, one day sit behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office as President of the United States. But here I am. That's what's so special about America. We're a nation of promise and possibilities, of dreamers and doers, of ordinary Americans doing extraordinary things. I've given my heart and my soul to our nation, like so many others. I've been blessed a million times in return with the love and support of the American people. I hope you have some idea how grateful I am to all of you. The great thing about America is here, kings and dictators do not rule, the people do. History is in your hands. The power is in your hands. The idea of America lies in your hands. We just have to keep faith, keep the faith, and remember who we are. We're the United States of America, and there's simply nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together. So let's act together, preserve our democracy. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. President Joe Biden addressing the nation from the Oval Office for the first time since announcing that he would not be seeking re-election. So, David, you said beforehand that you expected him to be vague on the reasoning as to why he's stepping down. What'd you see there?
Oh, I saw vagueness, but let's start with the grace aspect of all of this. It's painful. It's painful for him to give that speech. It's a speech he never wanted to give. I think it's a speech that none of us, if we were in his position, would want to give. So let's start there. And sometimes, even though he didn't say what we all knew was the case as it relates to what we call the lack of mental acuity, even though he didn't say it, we all know. And there's grace in knowing but not saying. And we just have to kind of leave it there. I mean, there's a dignity aspect to it. So I want to preface all of what I'm about to say with that, Dan. Look, he said it was painful, like I said, for him to do that. Let's also be clear about this. This was really his own doing. He could have gotten out 6 months ago, 9 months ago. His staff, his family, others let him down. They tried to hide it from the American people. The debate exposed it all. And here we are. So let's just be clear that it didn't have to come to this. It could have been done before. Couple of things. Like I said, he never explained the why. He didn't explain the why. The closest he got, he said this. He said, in recent weeks, it's been clear to me that we need to unite the party. Well, we can just then finish that sentence and read whatever we want into it. But I'll tell you how to finish the sentence. What he really was saying is, remember, he said in recent weeks, which means, this is the translation. Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, the elders came to me and said, you got no shot, Joe. And then and the reason I say it like that is because then his next line was, it's been clear to me that we need to unite, not America, unite the party. So that's the point. that it became clear to him. Because remember, in the speech that you just heard, he lauded all of the accomplishments that he's done as president. Well, if your record is so good, which he clearly believes his record is great, best thing since sliced bread, if that's the case, why are you stepping down? And so there's that unanswered question, even though it's very much answered, and we know the answer. A couple other things real quick. He had his normal kind of bumbles and stumbles. Sadly, that's become commonplace, which, is sad, but that is what it is. He said it's not about me, is what he said. It's not about me. But the thing is, it was about him, Dan. I mean, truth matters here, right? It's CBN News. It was about him. And the reason we know it was about him is because he said he's in this race and he's not going to quit until he did. So the only reason he was brought to this moment was because of the party leaders who told him, it's over, Joe. We're going to leak stories, and we did. And now we're going to go public. And before it got to be public, he got out. So he says it's not about me, but it was about his ambition to stay as president. It really was. I'm just being fully honest, and I'm trying to be as humble as possible as I say this. I say humble, but as graceful as possible. He said he would level with the American people and always give you the truth, but he didn't do that tonight. He didn't. Now, did he not do it because there's a pride factor involved? Sure. I mean, does anybody want to go on national television and say, look, I'm kind of losing it? No one wants to do that. So I kind of get that. But at the same time, if you say you're going to level with the American people, then level with the American people. I'm sorry I'm going long here, but I've got a few other things to say. He said this. He's going to pass the torch to a new generation. We knew that was coming. And on the legacy aspect, because he talked about his legacy, including that he mentioned the border, of all things, to mention the border, where 10 to 15 more illegal immigrants have come into this country since he's been president. I'm not going to comment on any of that. I'll just simply say, do the research and come to your own conclusion, good or bad. Just do the research on everything he said tonight. So finally, I'll just say, I made my choice. He goes, that's what he said at the end. I made my choice. And that is just not true. He didn't make a choice. He was forced into a choice. The party brass made the choice. So anyhow, there's a lot more to say. I'll leave it at that. I think I've taken up enough time. I feel like I filibustered the conversation.
Yeah. No, and I think, in this speech, it does feel like he was trying to sort of give a narrative that could be potentially digested by the media, who he may hope that would take and run with that this is a selfless decision, that he just, out of the goodness of his heart, just stepped aside. But for the reasons you just laid out there, that doesn't really logically add up. I mean, just from what we saw and then the sudden shift after that. Another interesting thing in this speech, David, was that he went right back into the rhetoric of saving democracy. There was very little sort of, laying out the differences in policy and, the other side wants to do this and we want to do this. It was this more of this general, you either want to save this country. I mean, he harkened back to Benjamin Franklin, republic if you can keep it. And so he set that narrative in play here again, which is the high stakes of it, which is honestly rhetoric that was criticized after what we saw happen on the 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania.
That's a good point. And to be clear, he won't give that rhetoric up, and neither will Kamala Harris and the Democrats. And the reason they won't give it up, Dan, is because they truly believe it. I mean, they truly believe Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. And so, not that you have to give them credit for that, but at least they're being authentic. I mean, I think they really believe it. Having said that, it's kind of rich to a degree coming from Biden and Harris and others who talk about a threat to democracy. And then Trump is going around talking about how they've weaponized government against him. But beyond all of that, how the Democrats have decided to, in essence, forget an open or contested convention at this late date and just go ahead and bestow the nomination on Kamala Harris. And to be clear, what I mean by bestow, because I know there's a lot of people in the conservative media atmosphere that think this was some sort of, coup or something like that. I mean, I understand to a degree what they're saying. In essence, what they're saying is that the party brass came to Biden and said, you know, it's time, Joe. So in that sense, that's true. But the reality is that the delegates who are, remember, we're a representative government, as you know, Dan, and the delegates represent the citizens. So if Kamala Harris and others are going to the delegates and saying, in private, but they're going to the delegates and saying, hey, look, you know, I want to be the nominee, and the delegates are okay with it. Well, that is what it is. And, you know, it's not like Gretchen Whitmer or Gavin Newsom or any of these other folks are saying they want to be the nominee, and then Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi and everybody say, okay, we're going to put that person out there, you know, and we're going to endorse that person. No, it's Kamala Harris. She's the vice president. She's on the ticket with Joe Biden. They're together. So I think people, I mean, the conservative media need to dial that back a little bit, but I digress.
All right. Well, President Biden did just address the nation. If you're just joining us right now from the Oval Office, first time speaking since announcing that he is not going to be seeking re-election, and appreciate you joining me tonight, David, to help break it all down, and look forward to seeing more of CBN's David Brody on Newswatch, the 700 Club. Make sure you're checking out all of these programs from CBN News. You can find them on the CBN News YouTube channel where you are right here, or you can go over to cbnnews.com. Also, make sure to check out the Quick Start podcast. Yours truly will be on that tomorrow morning, bright and early. All right. That is it from here. And again, make sure you're getting over to cbnnews.com early and often. We'd greatly appreciate it. God bless. We'll see you next time. Take care.
See you.